For many years, our crochet and cross-stitch patterns were influenced by the work of Ann Orr, who lived from 1875 to 1946. Ann was a Nashville, Tennessee native, and she's pictured here in front of her home in her Packard. Now, she was the first to have an electric starting car in Nashville. Well, she always looked queenly and wore black. She wore a little black hat and a high lace neckband. Ann was the art needlework editor of Good Housekeeping magazine from 1919 to 1940, and during that time she worked for J.P. Coates and Clark Thread, and she loved to feature instructions on crochet, especially those with a pictorial design. I have some crochet pieces. Now this one is a collar with a great design in it. It's beautiful. And this one is the pictorial design of the colonial lady with the hats. Wonderful. Well, I found this booklet in Grand River, Wisconsin, and it says right here, Filet Crochet, second book, Cross-Stitch Designs by Ann Orr, Nashville, Tennessee. And this is my favorite. It says right down here, price 25 cents. Well, inside are some border designs for her crocheting right here. Really nice looking designs. And as well as the crochet, she had cross-stitch designs. And right here in the very center fold are 4 color pictures. Beautiful. So whenever quilting became popular, she also did quilts, but she followed her influence from her cross-stitching. Let me show you some of her quilts. This one is the French wreath. It's typical of an Ann Orr design with the center medallion. Oh, just beautiful colors, pastels in the wreath design. And then the green separates the pillow and the side sections. It's made of 1-inch squares, and the quilting is absolutely exquisite. Now, this technique is sometimes referred to as postage stamp because of the tiny size of the patches. The second one, wait till you see it, is called the Heirloom Basket. It's one of 4 designs that were featured in January 1935 issue of Good Housekeeping magazine. Her favorite motif was a basket with a bow, and this one is a beauty. Now, to achieve the cross-stitch appearance, she made the pattern from 1-inch finished size squares and just sewed them together. I love the delicate pastels, and then she used the shading in the solid colors. Ann Orr said, the most important piece of furniture in the bedroom is the bed. Therefore, the most important accessory is the bedspread. Well, I have to agree. Now, quilts with patches this size totally amaze me. But I know a thoroughly modern trick, and we can make quilts the easy way. I'm intrigued by Ann Orr's cross-stitch pattern, so I decided to select my favorite one, and it was not easy, but I settled on this one. It's a basket with 4 flowers in it, flowers of 3 different values of pink, 2 shades of green, 2 values of green, and then a yellow and brown basket. The first thing I did was take it to my color photocopier and enlarge it so I had something that I could see. Oh, my eyes are getting old. And then I went to my computer and actually charted it out by graphs and made a list of all the colors and counted up exactly how many I needed. This chart resulted in this wall hanging, and I love it. It was so much fun. Now, I had 2 different pieces of hand-dyed fabrics, a yellow piece and a peach pinky piece, and I cut that up so I could get the flowers in there, use 2 different values of green, the blue for the pot, and then the background fabric all around it, and that peach just settles it off. Well, I enjoyed that one so much, I decided I'd have to do a larger one with a border. And Ann actually had a border on the same page, had this layout, and this border resulted in this computer chart right here. And just keep on going. It's too much fun. And this is what it looks like graphically on paper. And this is what it looks like in fabric. Now, Teresa sewed this one for me. It has the different values of burgundy and pinks, then the flowers, greens, 2 different values of green, and then those border pieces going all around the outside edge. And when you look at it, you know those little squares actually look like they're woven together, different values in the brown vase, the brown pot. It's just wonderful. So much fun to do. Well, let's take a look at the fabric and see what we can do. And most of these cross-stitch patterns, you know, you can take any cross-stitch pattern and do exactly the same thing that I did. But for most of them, you need to have 2 values of the same color, or maybe even 3 values of the same color. Now, this was the hand-dyed piece that I used, all in one piece. I got all of those values. That's fun to use. Or if you have something that looks like a hand-dyed, these are great. 2 different values of pink. I have 2 different values of brown, 2 different values of green, and then the background plus this is fusible interfacing. It's non-woven fusible interfacing that has a 1.5 inch grid charted on it, and that grid is our secret for today. Don't tell anybody, but it's a lot of fun to do. Now, for most of those pieces of fabric, you only need to have about 1/8 of a yard, just a tiny bit. And for the background, 1/2 a yard. Well, I decided I would show you how to make something a little easier. So I took this little basket right from Ann Orr's catalog. This is her original, and I charted it out so I know exactly how many pieces I need. So from that, let's get our pieces cut. You know, you could spend a lot of time. We have to cut 1.5 inch pieces. You could spend a lot of time cutting 1.5 inch pieces, or you could do it really quick. So I have this tool that's going to help out. I stacked up pieces of 4 different of my fabrics. I have a brown, my 2 pinks, my green on the bottom, and I'm just going to take this cutting tool and line it up on the straight edge. There's a line right along there, and I have 0 to the right of my salvage edge. So there's just a little groove right here. I put all of this on a small mat, so I'm just going to put my cutter in this groove and cut away. I'm actually going to remove the salvage. Okay, we need to cut 1.5 inch strips into 1.5 inch squares. So I'm going to go to 1.5 and just go ahead and skip over to 3. You just keep on multiplying, go over 4.5. Put your cutting tool in the 6 groove, cut away, and let's see, math over to 7.5 and to 9. And that's all the further I'm going to go with this little piece. Okay, so now let's just go ahead and pull away the salvage. And these should be 1.5 inch strips going this way. Okay, now take the mat, get rid of the salvage, turn your pieces, and place the cutting tool back on exactly as you had it before. And I'm going to make sure I have a little extra over on past 0 right here. And I'm just going to start all over again. Cut at 0, cut at 1.5. I better hold down tight, hold this flat, and go to 3, and you just keep on cutting right across. And when you look, ta-da, you have perfect 1.5 inch squares. They look great. Now just go ahead and take your 1.5 inch squares and stack them up into a color order. And as soon as I get these done, I'll be ready to go on. Finally, I have my pieces ready to go. They remind me of colorful bits of candy good enough to eat. Now I have my fusible interfacing, my gridded interfacing cut to size, and it is 1.5 inch squares, cut 14 across and 15 in height. Now, it's actually a larger piece than my pressing mat. So I placed a flannel sheet underneath. Now, if you don't have a flannel sheet, you could also use a towel, but get something large enough for your piece of fusible interfacing. Now, checking out the pattern with the line going down through the middle, I took a pin and placed it so that it's in the center line. And just to help me with the reference point, I counted up 6, which is the basket, and put a second pin right there. And I have another pin right up at the top, so I know where I'm going. That's always a good idea. So I want to start right down here with the basket. Now, you actually save your background pieces for last. So start with your colorful pieces and start from the center and work out. It's easy that way, and work with one color at a time. So that's the bottom of the basket, and then the next piece is just 2 wide. So I'm just going to follow the chart, place those pieces right on there, and line them up. Now, remember, your fusible is right side up. Your fusible is right side up, so when you actually touch it, you can feel that fusing. If you look on the other side, it's smooth. You can see the lines clear. But you want to have the fusible side up. Oh, don't be like Teresa and I. We both completely laid out a pattern with the wrong side up. So I'm just going to go ahead, follow my chart. I have 2 going this way, 2 from the center, and 2 this way. Make sure they're completely touching each other. Just work them with your fingers. Fill them in place. Well, I'm going to keep on going until I have this completely covered. I have all of my pieces laid in place now, and it only took me 20 seconds to do. Just kidding. But anyhow, it does go fast. And now's the time to press the pieces in place. I have a very hot steam iron, and you just want to do an up and down motion. You just want to go straight down on it and then lift it right up, because you don't want to get any of these pieces moving around now. Make sure you have the pieces so close that you're not getting the fusing sticking to the iron. And actually, if you have put a piece in place and you're not pleased with it and fused it down, you know, if you just reheat that piece, you'll be able to lift it off and replace it again. So you just go around, up and down, steam, hot iron on all of the pieces. Now, actually, in those 20 seconds, I also pressed all the pieces in place so I can go on to the sewing. Just kidding. Now, we want to start on the far right of the piece. And you take this far right row and just flip it right sides together to the second row. And just finger crease it all along there. Finger creasing or pressing really helps whenever you sew down that row. It's the 1/4 inch seam, 15 stitches to the inch, and I have this great foot that's just gonna keep that in line. Okay, just start at the top. Now 15 stitches to the inch on a computerized sewing machine is around a number 2.0. So just keep most of the work out to the left of your machine, and that fold on the right, that bar on my foot is just catching that right along there. Actually, this is such a fun project, just in case you've been bedridden. You could sit and put this together like a patchwork puzzle. And I think that even children would enjoy doing this too. You could give it to them, give them a large space to work, just like patchwork. A lot of fun. So now I'm at the bottom of the row, and it's great because if you notice, I didn't even need to match all of those seams. You keep the piece that you just sewed on the top, always on the top, the work to the left of the sewing machine, and you just refold it now. Crease the second row with your fingers, get it nice and flat, and just sew this row. And all you do is just continue creasing from the right side, clear over to the left until you have all of the vertical rows sewn. Let me finish these vertical rows. I have my vertical rows sewn in, and this piece is shrinking. It's almost half the size of what it was originally. It's very interesting to look at how those vertical rows just seem to fit right in place along there. This is what it looks like from the back side. You just see everything going in one direction. Now, we're going to do some clips right at each one of the pieces where they join together. So you need to have a very sharp pair of tiny scissors, and you really need to have a good point on them. And there's actually a line printed on the fusible interfacing that you can trim, but when you look at it, you can just see by your eye right where these two blocks were joined together. So you go down and you do one whole vertical row. Let me see just a couple more. And once you have the first vertical row done, then you just take it and you roll it over so that the rolls are falling onto the whole piece of work. And you just start clipping one more time, going right down along there. And once you have all of the clipping done, then we're going to go across the opposite way, or actually this way. We're going to start at the top again. Flip the top row onto the second row. Keep the work out to the left, and you're always going to keep the part that you're sewing, the part that has the seams, on the top so you can see what you're doing. Now, because of that clipping, you can go ahead and actually split those seams. You're going to lock them and push them in opposite directions, and it's just going to work beautifully right down along there. So let me get this one started. It's same seam allowance. Gosh, you have to have the same seam allowance so that it lays straight. Now I'm going to start by pushing the top seam up every time. The bottom one will just naturally fall down, and you just stitch right across there. Now the first time I did all of that clipping, oh my gosh, I couldn't stand it. It was painful. So I said, okay, I'm going to time myself on this one. So I timed myself. I found out I could clip the back of all these pieces in 10 minutes. I said, I can stand anything for 10 minutes. So it was just fine. Just count it out, and it won't take long. Yeah, I'm already to the bottom of the first row. So you just keep the part you've just sewn on the top, roll to the next row, and now so that you can see the way you pressed the previous seam, it went down. Now this time, the underneath one is always going to go up. So I'm going to just continue sewing all of my vertical seams. The next time you see this, it is really going to be shrunk up. Each time you see this, it gets smaller, but it turned out to be a charming wall hanging. I'm very pleased with it. Now, the next step is critical in keeping the line straight. Well, I want to press it, but I'm actually going to refer to it as blocking, and I think we'll be happier. Take a look at the back now that it's completely sewn, and you can see how all of the seams are going along there, and it's pretty amazing how every single one locks together. I want to place it on the pressing mat, on the gridded pressing mat, so that I can block it square. I'm going to line up the lines across the bottom here and along the sides so it's just perfectly straight. Let me move over one grid. Now the bottom row just naturally goes towards the bottom, so I'm just going to press down flat. There is steam in it, but I'm going to go over the up and down motion, and then each row after is all just naturally pointing towards the top. Now the first time I did one of these, I stretched it badly, and I was very sad. Well, the more I do, I think I'm getting obsessed with this. I can't stop. Keep on doing more of them. But just do the gentle up and down pressing. Oh, it's much flatter now. I found out that it's not necessary to completely push hard and go into those seams. Just more or less block it like this. I decided to just add a binding. So I already have my backing on the bottom, my batting on top, and I'm just going to center this in the middle and then just smooth it gently. I like to baste my quilts with safety pins, and so I have little covers on the safety pins, 1-inch safety pins that helps to hold on to them easier. I'm using a tool that's helping me close those pins. So I'm just going to go right through and place the safety pins in places away from where I intend to machine quilt. I'm just going to machine quilt outlining the basket and the flowers. I'm going to finish pinning this and I'll show you how to put on the binding. I couldn't stop at my pinning. I finished that, then I put my walking foot on my sewing machine and just kept right on going. Now this is my binding strip. It's a 2 3/4 inch wide strip that we cut salvage to salvage, then piece together in one long piece and then press so that the wrong sides are in. Now I'm lining up the raw edges of the binding with my quilt top, and I'm just about ready to come into this corner, and that's the most critical part, so I'll show you. I have a straight pin, and I'm going to pin in exactly the same distance that my seam allowance is. So I've got the pin right there. And then as I come up to this pin, I'm going to just stop right at the pin and actually use needle down, whoops, right there. Okay, now at that pin, I'm going to raise my presser foot and turn it to the last remaining side. This is getting exciting. And then just reverse sew right off your binding. Raise your needle and free up your binding so that you can take your binding and fold it straight up, and it creates that 45-degree angle right there. Fold it straight up, line up the side of the binding with the side of the quilt, and then fold it straight down again. And this time, the straight edge lines up with the outside edge of the binding. All these little flips and turns and such. Makes it so easy though. Okay, I'm just going to pick up stitching, and I'm coming into where I'm going to end. So I'm just going to stitch right about another inch or so and stop. And right here, whoops, lost my scissors. Well, that won't work, will it? So right here, I'm going to take it and fold it over. Let me find a pair of scissors. Scissors are very useful. I'm just going to fold this so that we can overlap it. Let's see if we can fold it back like this. Fold the two ends together so they're going to meet. We'll just fold the ends over, crease it, and then that's where we're going to seam so we can have one continuous seam. But let me show you how magnificent the corners look on this. I'm just going to take my straight edge, trim up to the binding, cut across there, and I'll just go right across here just so you can see. And then when you take this corner and pop it out, this is what that miter looks like. Ooh, great. And from the back side, I'm going to just go ahead, fold the binding so that it covers over that stitching. And right here, take a tuck that into a miter. And then I'll just go back from the right side and stitch in the ditch for a beautiful finish on the binding. Ann Orr will always be remembered by quilters for her contribution, especially with new cross-stitch quilts as this one being finished. Oh, it's so much fun to do, and it's ready for display. I can't wait to hang it up. Well, I did several more of Ann's designs as well. Now, this single pink flower is a favorite of mine. I just love those bright pink fabrics, the greens, and then the pink background. It's wonderful. Well, this was fun, but Teresa has also been having a ball with this Ann Orr original design. She put in the bright oranges, the yellows, the pinks, and then I like the blue vase. It's fantastic. Well, she had another one. Now, we have to guess which one this one is. We're not sure if it's fruit or if it's flowers, but we know whatever it is, it's bright and it's very, very pretty. We think these are grapes on the side. What do you think it is? Well, this quilt maker had an opportunity to combine her love of cross-stitch with her embroidered leaves and her stems and her applique flowers. Just beautiful. And she used such tiny stitches in her quilting. Well, cross stitch has always been a favorite pastime of mine. This is a sampler that I made in 1987. I signed my name right here. Well, someday I'll get it framed, but I did have a great time doing all of these different stitches. Well, I tell my sons, this is their legacy. Cross stitch and quilting. They're the things that I love doing. Well, I know someday my projects will be their remembrance of me. Well, each day is just like a little stitch in a sampler. So you should enjoy spending your days stitching for those you love.